Good evening, students. Today we are going to look at the endocrine system and its functions and the glands that are associated with that are in the endocrine systems and their functions as well. So let's begin. So what is endocrine system in general and what does it do? What is its function? So endocrine system basically consists of glands or the endocrine glands as we call it. And what does endocrine glands do? It releases chemicals called hormones into our bloodstream. And what is the purpose of these hormones? This hormone uh, flows to the bloodstream to the designated parts of our body or other glands for that matter, and it conveys certain messages to that part of the body or the glands. And every hormone has different functions associated with it, which we are going to look through in this chapter. Okay, and hypothalamus and the endocrine gland has a very complex relationships, and we are going to look at how hypothalamus exerts influence on the pituitary gland. So this gland is located just below the hypothalamus. I mean, the pituitary gland is just below the hypothalamus, and hypothalamus has a very great influence on the pituitary. The hypothalamus is the organ that links the nervous system of our body and also our endocrine system of the body. So the pituitary is sometimes described as a master gland, okay, because the hormones it releases regulate the action of the other endocrine glands. So that's why the pituitary is called the master gland of the body. Then there is the hypothalamus, that is, as I was talking about it before, it is the brain structure next to the pituitary. It has the very great deal on the endocrine system. So this hypothalamus releases uh, neurosecretory cells, okay, that manufactures hormone to be released directly into the bloodstream, serving the anterior pituitary. Basically, hypothalamus sends signals through its hormones that for the pituitary to release to release certain hormones that in turn ask the other glands in our body to start releasing their hormones and to proceed the functions. Okay, so here is the figure of the hypothalamus and pituitary. So as we are talking about, this is hypothalamus that lies very close to the pituitary, and as you can see, there is two lobes in this pituitary. So this is one of them is the anterior pituitary and the posterior pituitary, which we'll be getting into in a very great detail. Okay, now here we are going to look at the anterior pituitary alone. Uh, so the hormones produced by the anterior pituitary. So as we were discussing, there are two parts of the pituitary. One is the anterior pituitary and the second one is the posterior pituitary. So anterior pituitary produces two hormones, that is the growth hormone and gonadotrophic hormone. Growth hormone is released steadily throughout the childhood, and its major role is to in our growth. It helps for us to grow steadily, and it is uh, released steadily throughout the childhood, and also it has a role in the extra spurt during the adolescence. But the growth hormone, it is terminated after the onset of menstruation in girls, and after when the boy starts to produce testosterone in increased amounts in the puberty, thus production of growth hormone is terminated. And the second hormone is the gonadotrophic hormone. So the role of gonadotrophic hormone is to control the production of male and female sex hormones. Okay, so the pituitary releases gonadotrophic hormones. It prompts the sex glands to produce their hormones like the testosterone, progesterone, etc. So the pituitary releases the gonadotrophic hormone. It controls the production of the male and female sex hormones. Then comes the hormones: thyrotrophic hormone, prolactin, and adrenocorticotropic hormone produced by the anterior pituitary. So the anterior pituitary, the thyrotrophic hormone is one of the other hormone produced by the anterior pituitary. So the role of thyrotrophic hormone is to prompt thyroid gland to produce its its secretion or its hormone, that is the thyroxine. So thyroxine controls the body's metabolic rate. So thyrotrophic hormones that is released by the pituitary tells the thyroid to release thyroxine, which in turn controls the body's metabolic rate. So then comes the prolactin. The role of prolactin is to it prompts the production of milk, okay, in pregnant mothers. So its major role is in the milk production. Then comes the adrenocorticotropic hormone or the ACTH, and it signals the adrenal glands to produce their secretions. And the secretions of adrenal glands is their role is majorly in the stress or activity response in humans. Okay. Then comes the posterior pituitary hormones. So the posterior pituitary hormones are manufactured actually by hypothalamus itself, but it is stored in the posterior pituitary. Okay. So the instruction to release them into the bloodstream also comes from where the hypothalamus itself. So that one of the two means a hormone produced by the posterior pituitary is the oxytocin and vasopressin. So oxytocin has many roles. One is the release of milk and the contraction of uterus during the childbirth. So when it is delivery time or when mother is giving labor, during the labor we need the uterus need to go through rigorous contraction for the childbirth, and oxytocin is the one that triggers or it has a major control on those contraction as well as the release of milk. And vasopressin is another hormone. Vasopressin actually majorly regulates the output of urine on the kidney. Okay, so it is also called the antidiuretic hormone. In this picture you can see that this is actually put here to make you realize the structure of anterior and posterior pituitary and how it is different. So this is the hypothalamus and the pituitary lies very close to it, that is the and it is divided into two parts, anterior and the posterior pituitary. Now let's look at the adrenal glands. So one of the major uh, glands in our body is adrenal glands, and it's located on top of our kidneys. And there, as we discussed before, the secretions of adrenal glands is majorly controlled by the ACTH hormone produced by the anterior pituitary. So the adrenal medulla. So let's talk about different parts of that gland. So adrenal medulla is a central area of the gland. The central area of the gland or the adrenal medulla secretes the adrenaline and noradrenaline hormone. Okay, and both of these hormones is their role is to assist physical activities, and they are also involved in the fight or flight response in humans, which is mediated by the ANS or the autonomic nervous system. So uh, you know what is a fight or flight response, right? That when something very threatening happens, the humans respond is either to flight or to fight against it. So there is a different reactions happening, different physiological responses done in our body in order for this response to happen. And these two hormones, that is the adrenaline or adrenaline, has a major role in this. Okay, and they also have a major role in the emotions, because adrenaline as I was talking about, the fight or flight physiological responses, most of them include our heart beating faster, then we enabling our blood is flowing through to our limbs so that we can fight or we can flight faster. Okay, so when the fight or flight response happens, the body makes sure that the hormones, I mean the blood is flowing majorly to our limbs and not to other uh, unimportant organs at the moment, like the digestive system. When we are when we are facing a threat or a danger, it's important that the blood flows to other, like our limbs, flows to our limbs rather than to other areas of our body. So adrenaline and noradrenaline make sure this happens. So till now we were talking about the hormones produced by the adrenal medulla. Now let's look at the hormones produced by the adrenal cortex. Okay, so adrenal cortex produces the corticosteroids. Two examples of corticosteroids are cortisol and hydrocortisone. Okay, both of them, their major purposes is in the regulation of blood pressure. So cortisol's one of the major function is the stress. So uh, as cortisol increases, stress also increases. Okay, so when the fight or flight syndrome, or when the fight or flight response is happening, the individual is under stress. So the excess production of corticosteroids happen when an individual is under constant stress, and it is detrimental to our body, and it causes a lot of other physical changes and physical problems as well. Okay, this is the where this is our kidney and our adrenal glands are situated above our kidneys. So what happens when the hypothalamus tells the pituitary glands to release ACTH, the pituitary glands ACTH, which in comes and prompts adrenal glands to release the cortisol, which has a major role in our fight and flight responses. Next is the pancreas. So the pancreas, what is the role of pancreas? Pancreas produces insulin, and the role of the insulin is, what is the role of insulin? It prompts the cells in the liver to break down the glucose. Okay, so why do we need glucose? Because the body needs glucose in order to function properly for its energy. So it's the insulin which prompts the cell in the liver to break down this glucose for storage as glycogen by the liver. So the pancreas releases its insulin according to how much sugar has been ingested and how much exercise the person has taken to bump up the sugar. So this is why when its sugar problems happens when the insulin is low or high in like people, and this is what we call diabetes, right? So when if you have seen people with diabetes, you may have noticed that the major uh, treatment given to or suggested by doctors or advised by doctors to people having diabetes is to make lifestyle changes in their exercise and in their food consumption. So diabetes, so there are two types of diabetes. One of them is the diabetes mellitus. So in the diabetes mellitus, they it the insulin is not enough for this process to happen, so they have to inject themselves with the insulin, and they become adept at gauging how much insulin they need, bearing in mind their exercise or food balance. Okay, but however, injected insulin is released into the body on a regular time scale rather than according to the need. Okay, so natural insulin that is produced in our body is actually the body understands when we need insulin and it be produced accordingly. But in diabetics, this does not happen because we are artificially injecting the insulin that the body needs. So, if the diabetics miss their meal, or if they are under physical or mental stress, they may lapse into what what's called insulin coma. Okay, so the morning behaviors might be, there might be a lot of anger, irritation, aggressiveness, because the brain is the first organ to respond, okay, to the lack of sugar. So people who have this diabetes mellitus, when their insulin level is sorry, not sugar levels is going a lot down. Okay, these are some of the warning behaviors that you may notice, and they might be bad tempered because if they are not eaten in some time. So it's very important for them to what have a very routine life, because their body is not producing the natural insulin that they need. So this is a picture of the pancreas. This is where pancreas is situated, and this is from where the insulin is produced. Then comes the gonads. So what are the gonads? Gonads are the male and female sex glands in our body. Okay, the hormones that the gonad produce determines the sexual and the reproductive behavior of our humans. Okay, and the great deal of behavior is controlled by the central nervous system. And not only not the hormone is not the only part that is governing this behavior. The central nervous system has also a major role in that, but the gonads also plays a major role. One thing we have to notice that is, or take note is, the most of the findings that we know, or most of the things that we take for a fact, comes from the experimental works that is being carried out on animals. So we must be careful when we extrapolate these findings to humans as well. Okay, so we'll be careful and think like we should be careful in taking that findings exactly to humans. Okay, so it has been seen that in both the sexes, increase in the production of sex hormones, there is an increase. Okay, the sex hormone, the release of sex hormone is increased during the adolescence, because this is a period when they are ready to become reproductive. Okay, in the males, androgens are produced. So when the androgens are produced, usually the secondary sexual characteristics happen, such as the physical changes in the growth of body hair, the voice deepens, and increase in the sexually oriented behavior. Okay, then increased aggression is also that happens, or that is linked with the androgen production, that is especially seen in men. Okay, a growth spurt in males occur during the same time owing to extra production of growth hormones, whereas in females the growth pattern in adolescence is much less marked, and the onset of menstruation signals the decline of growth hormone secretion. So when this happens, when the puberty happens in the adolescence, the growth spurt happens in the males, etc., associated with the secondary sexual characteristics indeed. And one difference between males and females is, in males the growth hormone secretion is still present, while in females the growth pattern in adolescence is very less marked. And when a girl start menstruating, the growth hormone secretion declines in them. So these are the pictures or illustrations of our male, and this is the male female reproductive system, and this is a female reproductive system. Then comes thyroid. So thyroid also has a very major role, as we were discussing slightly briefly discussed before. The thyroid produces the hormone thyroxine, and its influence is basically on the metabolic rate. So what is metabolic rate? The rate in which the body uses the food to produce energy. Okay, if the metabolic rate is very high, our body is able to produce, like, metabolize the food or use up the food to produce energy very fastly. And if it is less, the rate in which the body uses the food to get energy is also less. So this influences behavior in the overproduction of thyroxine accelerated metabolic rate, causing the individual to become highly active, jumpy, and nervy, which is coupled with weight loss. And the underproduction of thyroxine is weight gain. Okay, so if there is a overproduction, that means that there is the body's metabolic rate is very high. Whatever food we take in is used up very fastly, so the individual also might be feeling like very highly active, jumpy, and nervy, and there might be a weight loss as well. And this happens vice versa, where there is a underproduction of thyroxine. Okay, this is the thyroid gland. It's present near our throat. Then comes the pineal gland. Uh, Pineal gland detects changes in the level of illumination in lower life forms. Okay, and it's often referred to as third eye. Then in humans, pineal gland secretes melatonin. Okay, which is synthesized from serotonin. So melatonin, serotonin, and very linked. Melatonin is synthesized from serotonin. Okay, and the melatonin's main function is it influences the body's circadian rhythm in the sense the daily cycles of sleeping and waking activities. And it also suggests that there is a complex biochemical control of circadian rhythms involving chemicals manufactured by the pineal gland. So this is where the pineal gland is present in the brain. And there are also many other glands, some other glands in the human body, like the salivary gland for that matter, which produces saliva, and it is the first step, okay, for the digestion to happen. So whenever we eat food from the mouth itself, the digestion starts to happen. Okay, there is a chemical digestive chain of events that is happening in our mouth, and the salivary glands are linked to our autonomic nervous system, and the production of saliva is suspended in strong emotional states such as fear. Okay, when fear happens or when stress happens, we one of the major symptoms is a dry mouth or dry throat. That means the salivary glands stop producing saliva at that moment. That's how the ANS and salivary glands are linked. Then comes the prostate glands in the males. It manufactures seminal fluid that surrounds the sperm. Okay, so what is the function of seminal fluid? It helps the sperm to travel and keep it fertile for for a certain period of time. Okay, and uh, a lot of few men realizes that they have a prostate gland, and cancers of prostate is something that is increasing nowadays, and it's often ignored, and they only realizes at a later stage. Hmm? Uh, and by and large glands that produce secretion rather than hormones do not have such a direct influence on behavior as to the hormone producing glands. So the actual hormone producing glands, when the hormone is released into the bloodstream, although the communication happens very slowly, the effect that the hormone produced in our body is for a long term rather than very short term, like like the communication that is happening in our nervous system. So the communication by the endocrine system is very effective, although the communication happens at a slower rate compared to the nervous system. The effect that comes after the hormone production is very long. Okay, that is the importance of the endocrine systems in our body, and this is how they function.